I think we should start with the meeting. Let me start by indicating that members have given apologies such that it is necessary for the quorum. And we have emphasized as the committee that members who are not present need to be told no ascertainties that this is a meeting day. They must commit themselves to the work of the committee from time to time. They mustn't use the fact that we're going for Easter as a reason that they don't attend meetings. If we sit with the meeting, taking into account that we are going to get a briefing, and from the briefing, we will call an urgent meeting of the committee to adopt whatever thing that is scheduled. With these words, I request the coordinator to read the agenda for us.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, the MEC and the delegate. The agenda reads as follows. Number 1, opening and chairperson's remarks, followed by introduction, 3, roll call and apologies, 4, confirmation and adoption of the agenda, 5, business of the day, briefing by the department, will brief us on Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Bill, and 2024-2025 second quarter performance report, and 2024-2025 third quarter performance report. Way forward, it will be question and comments by members, announcements and closure. That's the end of the agenda.
Thank you, Coordinator. I've already done my remarks, except to emphasize and appreciate the fact that the MEC's office and department has come up with a high-level delegation. This indicates that the department and the MEC respect this committee. We really appreciate it. Honorable MEC. Let's go to the next item, which is the unit. My name is Chancey Brook, the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee.
Good morning, I am Lindy Wolf, member of the Portfolio Committee.
Good morning, Chair. I'm a member of the MEC and his encouraged. I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Chairperson, your MEC and your colleagues. My name is Asta Kujuan. I'm the member of this committee.
Thank you, support staff and commission staff.
My name is Patricia Mbele. I'm the coordinator of this portfolio committee.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and members. My name is Pashadi Lakane. I'm the researcher for the committee.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Sadiq Kota from Legal Services. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is James Mabuta, ICC Services.
Good morning, our analysis is the communication services.
Tobe, Kimawara Pepele, Director of Communications.
Good morning, Matamara Mala, coordinator from the Office of the Chief.
Thank you. Over to Honorable MEC.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to yourselves, honorable members, honorable Wilson, honorable Kokoro, honorable Chairman, and the team that is coming from the Portfolio Committee. Let me first also make a comment on the attendance from our side. Like we made commitment at the beginning that we take the work of the Portfolio Committee very seriously. Hence we brought this delegation. It will be all the letters that we got from you that were they, the portfolio committee, were ready for that. And I must indicate, Chair, that I wish we can strengthen the coordination part of the work of the department and the committee. In that, if you see the way the agenda is, there's one item that the coordinator did not speak to. It's mainly because as a department we were not necessarily made aware in time. It should not be that we are running away or we did not prepare ourselves. So I'm just requesting the coordinator together with the parameterizing officer of the MEC to work very closely. The department is bigger. If the coordination will not be right, we will miss each other in the process and it will not be right. So that item, I was informed, Chair, and they were not ready because even myself as the MEC, I did not have time with the department to brief me on how. So the way we work is that I don't allow any committee report that will come here without me satisfying myself so that I can take accountability. That as it may, thanks very much. I remain Vice Corporal with the MEC for CoGHSTA. And with this team here, some of them are coming here for the first time. I don't know the HOD method. I would prefer, if you do have time, that each one speak for himself, introduce himself, so that you can know. We are introducing an item today on the SPLUMA. You will be able to see how much we took from the department so that the committee can have all the necessary information so they will have an opportunity to speak for themselves. But let me hand over to the HOD of the department.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chairman, members of the Portfolio Committee and colleagues. My name is Mjaji Malafela, HOD CoGHSTA.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee and our MEC and the colleagues. My name is Thomas Oshan, the CFO at CoGHSTA. Thank you.
Morning, Honorable members and the Chair of the Portfolio Committee, the Chief of the Portfolio Committee, as well as the MEC and the HOD of our department. My name is Mohali Jivani, the Executive Integrated Municipal Department.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Siriana Patla, Deputy responsible for corporate services.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members, and thank you, Honorable MEC and HOD. My name is Kwani Masibani John, Chief Director, Strategic Management Services.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Honorable members. My name is Paul Muthala, Acting DCG for Cooperative Governance.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, colleagues. My name is Mduduze President of CoGHSTA Legal Services.
Morning, Chair. Morning, MEC and HOD and all colleagues. My name is Umuja Malaji. I'm Director of Legal Services.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, honorable members. HOD MEC. My name is Thomas Mbani, Officer of Human Legal Service.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Chisho Rachel, Acting Director, Spatial.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. My name is Chidibari Ivan Koro from Office of the Premier Director, Spatial Planning.
Good morning, Honorable members from the State Committees. My name is Osama Shahani, the Environmental Officer.
Over to you, Chair. You can see we brought everybody who matters.
That is why I acknowledge that it is recorded that we do take the Portfolio Committee seriously. We do appreciate that. The next item, committee.
The next item is briefing on spatial planning and abuse management bill.
Over to you, Honorable Officer.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. Let me hand over to the HOD. I hope the presentation could be shared with the members of the Portfolio Committee. HOD.
Thank you very much, MEC, and good morning once more. We have made a PowerPoint presentation, which I'm sure it will be flighted there on the
Yes, there it is. If it can be put on slideshow for ease of discussion so that we can then be able to follow it because it's normally easier when you present on the PowerPoint. In terms of the structure, we can go to the next slide. We will, these are the areas we will talk to. Just the purpose, background, will then take you through briefly on the structure of the bill, what are the financial implications on the bill, the organizational and personnel implication. We'll also talk to the process that was followed when the bill was developed, then on progress, where we are in terms of the bill, and the concluding remarks. As requested by the Portfolio Committee, the purpose of the presentation is just to provide a synopsis of the bill itself so that members are kept abreast of the bill in terms of both its contents, what it aims to attain, but also where we are in terms of the work that we have done. Just as a matter of background, in 2013, at a national level, the Spatial Planning and Land Use Management Act was enacted, which with the aim of providing uniformity and guide spatial planning and land use management in the country. And this bill, my apologies, the act itself, because it's more a framework act at a national level, it then made provision that provinces must then come with their own specific legislation that will then take into account the peculiarity in terms of different provinces, because sometimes questions are asked, if you have SPLUMA, why then do you come and have a provincial legislation? It is because at a national level, it's more a framework legislation. Now each province then given that mandate to then have a province-specific legislation that still deals with matters of spatial planning, but taking into account the peculiarities within each province. Now, when we come to Limpopo, which is not something that is unique to Limpopo generally, in a number of provinces, considering the history of the country, we have a plethora of planning legislation that governed it previously, whether you're in the Goa, in Venda, in the Transvaal, or Gazankulu, there's just a plethora of planning legislation depending on where you are, where in some areas you even have a planning legislation. Now, based on the plethora of legislation and the need to then align in terms of the new dispensation, all those old legislation will then have to be repealed, and we have one legislation that provides an integrated and a uniform approach on matters of spatial planning, land use management within the province. The next slide, they will just indicate in terms of section 10, subsection 2 of SPLUMA is the matter that I've spoken to, but in the main is that you have a legislation that now talks to the province-specific needs. We should also just want to indicate that nationally, for those that may be aware, the traditional leadership generally has not accepted the SPLUMA, the National Act. And in the main, the reason has been, which is still an issue now, when they look at the Act itself, it does not make provision on the role of traditional leaders in the land development space, despite the fact that in rural areas, they are the custodians of the land. So that's really the big issue that is currently happening in terms of the sector and particularly the national ministry in relation to SPLUMA. And on the other side, there's Limpopo, we know we have a very strong traditional leadership base, and as a result, the involvement and making sure that our planning legislation and whatever regulations might emanate from it should then take into account the role that traditional leaders play in the land development space, because whether we want it or not, they do allocate sites, we know what is happening, and in some instances the issues that have been raised around where in some instances land is being allocated in areas that are not necessarily habitable. Now this bill and this work that we are doing aims, among others, also then to begin to address that space. So the bill then makes provision for the involvement of the representatives of traditional councils in land development matters. actually even on record, this bill, despite the fact that as a province we have not been able to finish it on time, nationally it has always been used and still being used as a good reference point on how you can include matters affecting traditional affairs on land development matters. The only sad thing is that as a province we took time to even finalize while we were hailed at kind of being trailblazers insofar as the province had attempted, even when we started at the bill, to then include the role of traditional leaders in the bill. This slide, I'm not going to talk to it, but it just basically talks about the role of the province in matters on regional planning and development, and then subsequently the role of the province in terms of just supporting municipalities. Now, in terms of the structures of the bill itself, Section 1 is just the normal definitions. Section 2 of the bill outlines the objects of the Act. Section 3 sets out the application of the Act. Section 4 provides for the provincial norms and standards, guidelines and models, because one of the things as a way of trying to create that uniformity, as we have indicated in the background, to create that uniformity, the bill also then provides for at a provincial level where you can then develop norms and standards, guidelines and models, whether it's your policies, your bylaws and so on, just to guide municipalities to make sure that you can have that element of uniformity, but without necessarily undermining the different spaces within municipalities. Section 5 obliges the Premier to identify matters of provincial interest that should be addressed, and this would include matters where you have a project that is of national importance. If you were to, let's say, maybe it could be a housing matter or any other project by a national department or that has got national interest and provincial interest, the Premier then has got that space to then identify those projects and how those matters should then be dealt with. Section 6 of the bill outlines the responsibilities of the Premier being the main custodian in terms of this work, but also of the MEC responsible for the function of spatial planning and land use with regard to the role of the provincial government in monitoring and supporting local government. Because as you would know, to a large extent, most of the functions on land use are primarily functions that are the concurrence, the responsibility of local government. Section 7 provides for the time period in which a municipality must submit the approved land use scheme to the Premier, just to ensure that the municipalities are also complying with the law. Section 8 talks to the establishment of an advisory forum that would then be chaired by the Premier, constituted by mainly both government and non-government partners, to ensure that all critical stakeholders do have a role to play in advising the province on ensuring integrated and sustainable land use development and management. And the number of other sections thereafter just talk to the composition of the forum, the membership and vacation, those administrative matters as it relates to the forum. But I think importantly, section 14 that then provides that the MEC responsible for spatial planning and land use will then be the secretariat to the forum. Section 17 talks to the inclusion of nominated representative of traditional councils on municipal planning tribunal. And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. One of the things that made the bill nationally to be used as a benchmark and a lot of learning exercise is how in the bill, members of traditional councils, a traditional council would have a representative in the planning tribunal, whether at a district or a local level, and when there's a matter that affects a specific area, a member of that traditional council would then sit in that planning tribunal in that specific municipality. So this has been a sort of a game changer in terms of how do you then include traditional leaders to participate in the planning and land development matters. The details there is what is contained in section 17 of the bill. Section 18 is just around your allowances and so on in terms of municipal planning tribunals, because municipalities are expected to have planning tribunals. It can either be at the district level or at the local level that will deal with land use applications. So that section just deals with that part. Section 19 deals with the authorizations that could be required in terms of legislation when there's a need maybe to amend land use or any other matters related thereto. Section 20 also, another key section for us as a province is that it provides that land use schemes that incorporate areas of traditional leadership should reflect the customs and usage of the traditional that community. So if a municipality has got a traditional community or traditional communities, when they work on their land use scheme, the land use scheme should not just be biased towards what one can call maybe the Western way of planning in terms of how it was done, in terms of your township ordinances previously and so on. But it must take into account what are the culture and the usage, the cultural practice in that area, but without undermining the principles outlined in the Principal Act, in your National Act, but also they need to ensure that development is sustainable and take into account other applicable legislation, which is something that we also think as a province is a very good step of ensuring that balance. Section 21 then sets out the requirements relating to land development applications on areas that fall under traditional leadership. This is also just linked to what I spoke to earlier on in terms of what Section 17 outlines. Then Section 22 is just around the appeals. We know that normally when applicants make applications, they might not be happy with the results. Then what are the mechanisms that are available for them to go and lodge appeals? So Section 22 deals with that part. Section 23 deals with the composition of the board of institution should a municipality establish an appeal authority. Section 24 provides for the offences and penalties, how you deal with where people have not complied with the provisions of the Act or other related planning instruments that might be emanating thereof. Section 25 and 26 deal with the delegations by the Premier and the MEC. Section 27 just indicates that municipalities will be expected to keep a register of land development applications that have been lodged, so that at any point in time that can be tracked. Section 28 provides for the need for some regulations. We know normally legislation would be broad, but when it comes to certain areas, you want to have regulations that then are detailed in terms of how you then undertake that part of the work. Section 29 clarifies the status of guidelines, models and drafts that could be issued in terms of this act, still in the space or spirit of either supporting local government and also ensuring a bit of uniformity. Section 30 provides for the repeal of laws, like we indicated that there's a plethora of legislation that have to be repealed, so that there's one planning legislation that then governs the planning space both at the provincial and local level. Section 31, transitional arrangements. We know that when new legislation comes into play, you then provide for transitional arrangements to ensure that there's a smooth transition from the old order into a new order. Section 32 provides for the short title and the commencement of the Act. On financial implications of the bill, there will be financial implications. Province will be expected to render support to municipality, do capacity building. We're not too worried about this part because already as a province, whether through the office of the Premier or CoGHSTA, there's a lot of support already happening. So it's not like there's something new in terms of the expectation. It is just that it will then be a refocus in terms of what do we support. So we are not looking at a need for a lot of additional resources just to provide support or as a province. There could be additional resources required, but it's not something that we are extremely worried about. The provincial forum, obviously being a new structure that does not exist, there will be financial implications in terms of your remuneration, sitting allowances and related expenses to that. Also, the other area that will also have financial implications will be if the municipality authorizes a board or institution outside its operation to deal with appeals that could give rise to financial implications. And provincial treasury would always be engaged as part of the process as and when there's a need arises for additional resources. But the bill itself, and once enacted, does not necessarily mean that there's going to be a lot of more money that is required really for its implementation. Because already a lot of work has been done. It will just be streamlining and, like I said, refocusing the support in terms of what needs to be done. On organizational and personnel implication, we've already spoken about the advisory forum. The second element is the secretariat, as indicated that the MEC responsible for spatial land use will be part of the secretariat. Here also, the existing personnel would really be drawn to render that secretariat. We're not looking at a situation unless something else determines that there will be a need for a special secretariat. But generally, it's just going to be people's what we have as a provincial government for the peoples of that secretariat function. Then the last one is in terms of delegations for just monitoring and support if we need to augment the capacity that we have. On consultation roadmap, consultations were held with provincial departments, district and local municipalities, traditional leaders, organized business, community-based organizations, and institution of higher learning. But in summary, what we are saying is that there's been a lot of consultation on the bill. The state law advisors also in the office of the Premier have been engaged and hence even part of the team today. We have this is really a joint work between both CoGHSTA and Office of the Premier, just to make sure that the bill itself, and which ultimately will become the Act, is then compliant with the other prescripts in the country. So we can then safely attest that there has been a consultation on the bill. In terms of the progress on the bill, the work started I think around 2013 or so. So there's just been a lot of work that has been happening. But it was previously published in Government Gazette on the 24th of November 2017, and it was subsequently tabled before the Limpopo legislature, but the bill has lapsed twice, more than 2 annual sessions at legislature. It was then republished in the Government Gazette and other print media from September 2022 and 30th March to April 2023. In September 2023, the MEC for CoGHSTA approved that the bill be retabled before the legislature, and in October it was then referred to the relevant portfolio committee. It was further resubmitted, but then the process was not concluded. Then it was then resubmitted again last year in November, and it also then meant that there had to be a new certificate that had to be issued, and that has then been dealt with. And today we are here briefing the portfolio committee. So if you look at the history of the bill, is that it has seen its days, and our submission here today is that as we are presenting and updating the portfolio committee, we therefore, in conclusion, submitting to the portfolio committee that the portfolio committee table the bill for enactment on the following reasons: that the passing of this bill into law will end up the sporadic application and provincial ordinances and assigned proclamations. It will also ensure active participation of traditional councils, in land development matters, ensuring that development traditional communities adhere to sound spatial planning principles, and lastly, it will bring certainty and constitutional uniformity on application of spatial laws in the province in line with the National Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the representation. Are we having questions for clarity and or comments? Honorable Wilson.
Thank you, Chairperson. Look, I am for anything that introduces norms and standards, okay, that we have a very strict guideline or legislations that monitor norms and standards. And I've read through this document quite extensively. So while I'm very pro that we have legislation that legislates norms and standards so that people don't have room to move illegally, I'm all good for that. My problem is, and the MEC and I discuss this regularly, this act on paper is wonderful, but until we've got basic services, this act means nothing, okay? And I think one of my challenges too is that we really need to start addressing the current challenges. There are so many people building now where they shouldn't be. Land expropriation aside, I'm not talking about the Juju values or those kind of issues, okay. But we've seen it when we've had very unusual weather patterns this year with flooding, people building below the flood lines, the 50-year flood lines, the 100-year flood lines, who are building in areas where they should not be. Now, I don't know whether they're doing that illegally or if the municipalities are giving them permission to. But either way, those challenges need to be addressed now, okay? It's one thing to introduce new legislation, but you've got to take action against those who are already not in line with any legislation. I've read the reports and I've read the comments by some of the traditional leaders, and I absolutely respect the cultures of this province, and I respect the traditional leaders, and it is part of the custom and culture of this province, but we must always be, they are worried about being undermined by sections of this act. But at the end of the day, and while we respect them, it's always going to be a case of custom versus constitution, okay? And there's always a grey area where customary laws clash with constitutional legislation, okay? And I think this is something we're going to have to discuss quite carefully. And we saw this with the recent court judgment stopping the taxation and levies on people by traditional leaders. So while I'm quite happy, and I think we must include traditional leadership in this development, we cannot allow them to be the final authority on what happens if it's not in line with current legislation or constitution. That is my contribution. And obviously, it's cost implications. We are working on extreme budget implications already, and this is not passed yet. I think we don't know where we're going right now, but I think over the next couple of years, due to restrictions and trade wars and all the rest of the stuff that's working around South Africa at the moment, that our budgets are potentially going to get tighter and tighter. I'm glad to hear that some of our existing personnel will be taking over some of the roles, so there's not too much of a cost implication there. But having seen what happened just recently when the salaries of the leader members were exposed, I don't want us as this department to land into that same situation. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. And there is talk of, getting provincial forum members. Who is going to set up that forum? Is it the MEC? Do we get access to who those forum members are going to be on your forum as mentioned here? And be able to vet some of the people who will sit on that forum. so that we avoid the situation that we saw at Liga. And that's it for me, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wilson. Honorable Bukani.
No, thanks, Chair. Greeting control to yourself, Chair, the MEC, and the entire encourage that you put along. I haven't got the question as such, but just to indicate that this kind of a bill, it's long overdue. There has been consistent conflict arising out of the implementation of SPLUMA by traditional leaders, and they have been resisting, of course, that intervention. And I think if we can be able to bring this to its conclusive end, it will assist in addressing such kind of matters. The inclusion of traditional leadership in planning is of serious importance. You can't have that peace in book if they are excluded. They will forever be resisting, of course. And if government then get disrupted by traditional leadership, then it becomes a problem, because we are forced to ensure that they get involved. So I do think we need to ensure that this process is speed up, so that we are able to finalize this. It has been a source of conflict, and I think it would really assist the province moving forward. I just want to check the inclusion of this traditional leadership in the forum. Which structure is going to be enlisted for nominating whoever will be leadership in the forum? Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Khan. Any other comments, questions? Yeah, proceed.
No, thanks very much. Just for purposes of clarifying myself, if you look at the object, I just want to check whether that could have been a proper capturing of the word before I deal with the matter. It says that the name is mentioned only to micromanage traditional leaders. I think you would assist us in that regard, because we can't have an intention to micromanage traditional leaders in the process of developing our bill. I'm just citing it so that in believing that the bill is recognizing that's what is captured, and I take it that if it reaches the relevant institution, they may have a serious interpretation, but also have a challenge in terms of the understanding of what we want to achieve. It's on 3 objects, object of the act, and it's on, if you read that part, 3.1 to the end. I was worried when I got that. But the other issue would be what will be the relationship of the forum with municipal tribunals? Because for a fact there are these establishments at the level of municipalities. And to try and deal with the question of land, but also to deal with matters relating to spatial development as part of the redress. But how these two are going to work together is a part that I thought it must also be reflected too. But also to take into consideration other pieces of legislation. And I'm happy that we have cited the Constitution at some point, but There's another law that says, I'm not sure whether it's the Traditional Leaders Act or so on. They will be able to clarify. But it says on matters that affect traditional leaders, when they are sitting at council, there's no way in which traditional leaders will not be given an opportunity to speak about matters of land. I also would want us to, as and when we are going to respond, be able to then collate all this into one and see how best we will be able to build into the bill, and we are able to produce a document that may not necessarily find itself in some challenges. But by and large, I saw that those are the issues that I wanted to raise.
Thank you, Honorable Machata. In the absence of further questions, and even before I hand over to
Chair, maybe coming back after the input by the question by Honorable Machata, and I realize, of course, the submission that we have here, that I was going through what he was raising, because they are very serious issues. But of course, it's a submission that was made by sort of. I was just going through these pages. It's not a submission that comes from the department itself. I was going through. I really was frightened myself, of course, when seeing those things. I just wanted to indicate that, so that my department was kind of frustrated on a whole check.
Thank you, Honorable. Before the MEC the opportunity to respond with his entourage. Mine is on the lapsed. You said HOD that it lapsed twice. I would want to know the reasons for the lapse, and as to whether that coursework got financial implications. Thank you. Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and thanks very much, Honorable Members, for the clarification questions. I must also give you the disclaimer that if us in the department, together with the Office of the Premier and you as the Portfolio Committee, we are at the same page, it will help us to go down to where we need it. The most difficult questions they will respond to, I will just take some which I think are simple to my level of understanding. The first thing, we are making an appreciation, and the HOD said that there were different legislations and how we will be able to make a signage on the use of land everywhere. Now, if there was Gazakulu, legislation, vendor, and everything, as a province we want to put one. And you know, and you said it, the question of land is the question that has made us to be where we are today, and we view each other this way or that way. And the question of who is the owner of the land in the village? If you can go there, and I said, heard you saying it properly to say, Limpopo has got different cultures. Where I come from, the Khoshu will tell me there is nothing, I'm the owner of this land. When you go to the legislation, it will put him as a custodian on behalf of government. He has that land on behalf of government. So, the issue is that what is happening here, it's an excuse that people are using because we don't have the law that governs how we should treat it. So if you see somebody doing something in that space, can you hold these people accountable on their actions, on how they are dealing with the matters of land? The question is no. And maybe it's what the chair is asking. Why it has been lapsed so many times before it can be enacted. And I have 5 years in that portfolio. We have been trying to say, let the legislation move on with public participation so that we can be able to finalize this as an act so that everybody else should be able to know that legally this is how we should be able to process the issue of land. And I think I'm coming to answer what would be the role, the relationship between the municipal tribunal and these other processes. I think by now, most of us might have tried to get a plot in a Hoshi or something. You will go there, council must still take that. Once the council has, they should be able to get the participation. Even when you get a plot in a village, there must be a traditional council resolution that agrees to say, Makamu is being allocated this size of land, this side, then council approves. So when it requires the proclamation, it will go through that process. It will not change the process or take the powers from the other one, or the other one says we are powerful, that we no longer need that other part. But I also want to, financial implication, I don't remember what is it. We are having a problem in the country, any resolutions that or legislation that we take, it will have financial implication, and we must find a way on how we should fund that. Including this, part of the process we're going to do is to also bring the provincial treasury to say, you must be aware that now we are moving towards the conclusion of this bill into the act. We should be able to provide something. Let me give an example of something that we should, the implementation of the TKLA. One of the things is what we said, that now there is a traditional council, legitimately or legally made. Just for their sittings, we will have to make provision for them to go and attend sittings, where does the money come from. We should be able to provide for in the implementation council, because that's what the legislation says. But I'm also responding to say, today when the Hoshi sits in a meeting, the community will be there, even when they to allocate a land. And the question is that he will not have to agree, him and himself alone, as a senior traditional leader today. He can only append a signature for the approval because the traditional council will have agreed. And in the traditional council, it will also have the community there. They will not be surprised to see a complex happening in a particular area. It will be that the matter will have been tabled if Honorable Machete applies for a plot to want to do. That submission will have to finally go to the traditional council, and the traditional council will have to agree on it. In the agreement, even if you say, can we get the attendance register of the traditional council on a particular day to agree on this development in this area, then it will no longer be an individual council. Hence the decisions of the traditional councils, if in challenge, it will not be challenged on an individual senior traditional leader. It will be a decision of a traditional council. So that is how this legislation with other legislation that he was referring to will work together for the implementation. So I think the other questions, HOD and the team, like I said, Office of the Premier is here, Legal Services is here, planning both from Premier and ourselves are here, and the HOD is here. They will help me also how the forum will be constituted, who has the power to make that. Over to you, Chief.
Thanks very much, Lucy, and thanks all of the members for the questions. I think the others were more some comments being raised, some of them by Honorable Lucy. We have noted that. The issue around the forum, actually to ensure transparency, if you look at the bill, firstly it is the Premier that's established that, but there is an advisory forum, and an advisory forum basically means people come, they will become with different expectations. I'm coming from the private sector, I will have different interests. If he's coming from the community-based organization, and the intention really is to then harness the various expectations and the expertise, so that the Premier as the custodian and supported by the NEC responsible for spatial planning and land use in the province. As and when they do, whether you do regulations, you do norms and standards and whatever, you're then guided by a broader, this is part of the democratic process if you look at it. And even in the bill, there's been an attempt really to show at a minimum level, to show that there will be an advert there for people must be having certain expertise, and so it is envisaged to be a highly transparent process. And the intention is really to make sure that the people that then get to be part of the advisory forum are people that can then add value, but it is also inclusive of society at large. Linked to that question, there was a question raised by Honorable Pogani on the traditional leaders in terms of the structures. Currently, in terms of legislation, we have the Provincial House of Traditional Leaders. So ordinarily, if we are to get, I don't think in the bill my colleagues can add, I don't think it has been very specific, but we do know that if there's a need for participation of traditional leaders in structures, the first point of call is if it's at the provincial level, is the Provincial House of Traditional Leaders, as legislated and established in terms of the law. They would then have to then decide who are the members that can be assigned to various government work. Just on that one. On the one of the objects I was trying to get, but maybe colleagues Malachi, if you have heard that you were able to note that, I was trying to look at the objects in my bill. I couldn't, maybe I missed that question, but Mr. Malachi can help on, and other colleagues can help on that one. The relationship of the forum with the municipal tribunal, not fully explicit in the bill itself, but like we say, an advisory forum remains an advisory forum. But when you come to the tribunal is established coming from the SPLUMA itself, the National Act. By the way, a lot of the things that are in the Act or in the bill are already being implemented in local government. If you go to a municipality now, they have a land use scheme that covers the entire municipal space. Because the Provincial Act is coming a little bit later, but a lot of all these other activities are happening. Now, a municipal tribunal will then is compelled to then look at the application in line with what the land use scheme of that specific municipality would be saying. So a forum member would not necessarily be going to sit and become a part of the tribunal, because there will be processes that a municipality would have gone through. If they decided to establish a tribunal at a local government, a municipal tribunal at a local level, they would have gone through the process to identify people with the relevant skills. Those are the set members of that forum, or if they opt to do it at a district level, like some of our municipalities in the province that have opted for the district planning tribunals. The Act will also look at it, oral matter is that the traditional, I'm sure you're referring to the Traditional and Question Leadership Act, but already in the bill, there are sections that talk about the must, like when you do a land use scheme. If I'm Polokwane, for example, I'm doing a land use scheme, it will be covering and so on. It says they must participate in that process. But that does not mean there are other processes that they will still continue to participate in terms of the provisions, in terms of the IDP and other related matters. So they are indicated, but if there are other inputs, I'm sure they can then still look at it, because indeed the Act itself, when we finalize it, must be very consistent and take into account the other legislation that have got a direct impact or implication on that one. Colleagues, you can get add on the ones that I've left. The one on the objects, I think, is the one that I haven't touched on.
Thanks, MEC. Thanks, HOD. The latest version, Honorable Machete, we have dealt with that portion. I don't know which version you have. It reads this the objects of the Act. The portion that which you are reading, it reads to provide for the role of traditional leaders in spatial planning and land use management in the province. It no longer as maybe we would have to share with the one that the Premier's officer ultimately claimed. because I'm not so sure the version that which we have, but the one that which we have, we've actually amended that part when we're doing the cleaning of the act with the price of the framework. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further charges from the department?
Sorry, Chair, if I may have a follow-up on what MEC McConnell says. So MEC, if I understand it, so the traditional leaders say they're owner of the land. The government says they are custodians of the land. Am I correct?
Government is the owner of the land.
And we give it, so they are not, the traditional leaders do actually not own the land. They are the custodians. Okay. So here's my question, and it's just a point for clarity. So you took us through the process where somebody applies for land in a traditional area. The call sheet discusses it, the chief discusses it, it goes to traditional council, and when traditional council has signed off or the call sheet has signed off, then that person gets access to that land. But those people don't get deeds to that property. Am I correct? They don't get a title. So at any time, if they upset a Horseshoe or a traditional leader or the community, that land can just be taken away again. My concern is that where there's no deeds, there's no legality. That's my concern. It's a point of clarity so I can get my head around how the customs work. Maybe you can correct me. Thank you.
Maybe before they can answer, Honorable Wilson, are you having a suggestion to make as a way of addressing the challenge of yours? Do you have some proposal to make?
Now I'm trying to understand the traditional leaders process.
Okay. Can I have maybe a workshop of some sort would be required at some point. Because definitely that is what the history of this country is. That some of us, where we stay, number of years, we have only what we call permission to occupy. And some of you, where you were staying, you were retired. And that is what is a bone of contention to do. And that's what the President of the Republic was trying to address in some instances. And that's why legislation like these ones are trying to come on board to want to resolve the challenges that, of course, it will run a different process if you are to develop an area you want to make a complex. Because the people who will fund you will want to see how, if you fail to pay, will they be able to reclaim them. So that's the process that we do. But in the traditional leadership, it will be different. That if they give it to me, I just want to have this law to do some other things. If I don't use, the law will say, I return back it to the Koshi, that they can still do something with the land if I don't. So, I'm saying, with the arrangement, that's why you hear everybody is talking about, and the statement, Honorable Matete raised, which is raised by traditional leaders, to say, we don't see your sincerity in this SPLUMA thing. We see you trying to micromanage us when the land is us. That's what Mahoshi will say when we say, no, on this matter you still participate, we want you to be here, but no, you have already have a foregone conclusion to want to take the land away from us as Mahoshi, whereas we were supposed to be part. And we are saying, we are sincere that they should also form part of it, so that by the time a land is used for something else, Mahoshi also has participated and agreed upon. Because we can't stay with land which can be able to create jobs in their own area and say they keep it for themselves. So that is why we are coming here. And the chairperson, I don't think we answered the question of the chairperson, and I think legal was supposed to come to the question of the chairperson. Why it has lapsed twice without necessarily making it to the final stage to be passed by the legislature. And I think this committee is saying brief us, we understand it, we go and work with the people and we see that this legislation gets to be passed so that it becomes a law in the province so that we can be able to hold each other accountable using the very same law that we have agreed upon. And that is one thing that I think we should dwell on HOD and the people from OTP to say, where did it start? In some instances, Chairperson, it will be members of the legislation will be too busy with campaigns. At the time, it was said it could not necessarily run its complete life. So maybe officials, I thought you would come give what could have been made and what we think this portfolio committee is expected to do so that they can contribute to the financial. Thanks.
Colleagues from the legal services, Malakin Gomezulu, on the why it lapsed twice, what were the main challenges?
Yeah, thanks, HOD. The department has always been honest and submitted the bill in time and on all those financial annual sessions. But our powers as the departments are limited. Once we submit the bill to the portfolio committee of the legislature, it lapses in that calendar year. So it lapses at the hands of the portfolio committee or at the legislature. And what we have been doing, because we have that cordial relationship with the portfolio committee, we have always been reviving the bill in terms of the rules. I think there's rule 176 every year. However, the unfortunate keep on happening because it couldn't be, the portfolio committee couldn't table it to be passed into law. So what I'm trying to say in no attempts, in a cordial terms, is that the department has submitted the bill to the legislature and it lapses at the hands of the portfolio committee and the legislature. That's where I'm. Thank you, HOD.
Maybe to add, HOD, on the expectation, is that we are pleading, maybe let me put it this way, that the portfolio committee look into this bill, ultimately present it to the legislature for purpose of it to be adopted, so that the Premier can ultimately assign it so that it can come into be a law in the province. That's the expectation we have. Thanks.
Honorable Machacha.
No, thanks very much. I think still on the object of the act, I would want to submit that if perhaps there's a revised version of the document, that be given, because this is what we have. Then it would mean that we may also as well have more areas in which we want to, but I appreciate the response by my learned colleague on that. But that be favored with, so that we will then have an opportunity to look at the bill and where we may want to make submission quick, so that we are able to table it for consideration by the House. I think I agree that we may have wanted to engage further, because there's much more that one could engage on the object, because part of the issues that are raised here may not necessarily be ordinarily object of the act, but we should be able to live with that. And I make a submission, Chair, that let's have that revised version, and we then go through that revised version. Where we may want to make input, they will give us space so that we are able to finalize. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Honorable Machata. We have noted your plea to the committee. We will have some time frames to make and meet. What I wanted to get from you is as to whether we need to do the process afresh, like your consultations and so on and so forth. Or do we take it from the tail end where we as the committee submit it to the legislature?
Yes, can I clarify on that last, Chair? Thank you very much. Chair, maybe let me start with the issue here, the lapsing of the bill. So, the lapsing of the bill normally happens in the legislature. So it is not of any fault of the department. I remember when this bill was first introduced, we had a very, very strong objection from traditional leaders. And the committee back then had felt that they will not proceed with the bill due to that rejection. Then the bill lapsed, it was introduced again, and I think those were the times of the COVID-19, and which also necessitated that the bill also lapsed. And the last time that it was, an attempt was made to have it reintroduced in the legislature, I think that was last year around February, March. But we had then advised the department to hold the process, because in any event that will have been at the end of the legislative term, and that will have meant that the bill will ordinarily lapse again. And we then advised them to then introduce it in the new legislative term. Hence they've introduced it in this legislative term so that the new committee can then deal with the bill. So, in terms of the process, Chair, once the bill has been introduced, like it has been introduced, it means that the bill will have to start afresh. Yeah. So we'll have to conduct new public hearings, consider those inputs afresh, and see what proposals or amendments we can make on the bill. Then ultimately we'll go through the legislative process, the second reading and the third reading, until the House passes into law, and it will then be sent to the Premier for assent, and then it will then come into effect. Just this out in terms of the process, how the process will follow, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The legal advisor from the department, are you concurring with our legal?
No, we concur.
Thank you. So we will leave it at that and take it further.
We'll take it further.
Yeah. You want to say something?
Yeah, maybe just to check. Because the legal advisor is indicating to say that the basis for maybe part of the issue that might have led to the bill lapsing is on the basis that, of course, there were some issues that the Trinidad does not have raised. I'm made to believe that even that concerns that they were raised were never filtered into the bill. Because if it's taken to them and they put inputs, what then have we done to make sure that their concerns are then incorporated, so that when it's taken to the legislature, it should be a reflection of also what they want. Or we might need to come in, because, okay, you are saying the process need to start after a week, and
yes,
we get to understand what is that they put, yes, and we were able to reflect on it with after our reflection as the portfolio committee, do we have to refer it back to the department too? Or what is the
On the issue of traditional leaders, I think at some stage when the bill had lapsed, the department was also aware that it did so because of the strong objections that we had from traditional leaders, and we had proposed to them, recommended that they should have a separate session with the provincial house so that they can then input on the bill at that particular stage before it can even be reintroduced in the house. And I see now in terms of the bill, I think traditional leaders has been given an opportunity then to be part of the forum, which is one of the issues that has been raised initially. But Chairperson, without digging into the processes, I think it will be up to the committee to then reconsider the bill in totality and then take the process forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we are agreed that it will have to start afresh and we'll take it from there. So let's take out of this item. The next item is the briefing on the second quarter report. Over to you, Lucy.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. I think if you agree that the presentation was the second quarter and third quarter, the HOD also has been going into how necessarily doing the first quarter, the second quarter now, come back for the third quarter, because obviously the third quarter is the underlying performance that you can do so that you can be progressive. So if you agree, the HOD will take us through that, because you will find the performance that was there by the end of second quarter was improved by the third quarter. Now we are looking here, already the fourth quarter is also done. We even know how we performed in the fourth quarter. So if you allow her, she will focus on the underlying last quarter that is here. So the Chairperson, the third quarter performance, we just touched how we were there on the second quarter, the third quarter.
Thanks very much. I just also want to indicate that I've already emailed to our coordinator the latest bill. I've emailed to her so that she can circulate, and we apologize that we did not have the latest bill when we got the documents. We can just go straight to slide number 3.
Something which is abnormal. Some members, because they came here specifically for the SPLUMA, they were coming to me to request if they can excuse. But when they were leaving, I thought, are they excused to go to work or they want to go home? Because it's Friday. I'm not so sure that they were not supposed to have. They should have gone to the HOD because they report to the HOD, not necessarily. But if Chairperson HOD agrees, those are things specifically for school. If the chair feels he can release them, let me have the position.
I think let's remember these were here for a specific purpose and they are done with that purpose. We are really sorry almost half. Thanks over to you, Honorable Lucy.
Thanks very much, Chair, for the opportunity once more. We'll start with the executive summary. The executive summary in the main, it really summarizes where we were actually it even covers a little bit even into February when we were supposed to have appeared. So I do think that it is in line with the directive of the chairperson. Is that at the end of February already, in terms of our housing units delivered, we had already surpassed the annual target because we're already at 4,714, and now we know, like as what Elise was saying, because we've already even concluded the year, obviously that number had gone up, but just basically in terms of the housing units, even when we closed at the third quarter, we were very close towards the finish line, and by February already we had exceeded our annual target, which is the reason why we ended up receiving additional 200 million from the national. But also I think we sometimes we also forget to when we apologize to indicate that we even received 50 million from the province as well, in respect of the good performance on housing units. So all in all, there was an upward adjustment of 250 million in terms of the program itself. Asbestos roofs, we had targeted 755. We completed 577. We have 178 that we could not finish the replacement in Spatial because of the need for additional budget for temporary accommodation with asbestos because of its nature and its danger. When we deal with the house, we must work on the house and finish it before they can come back into the house. So the 577, and even in the previous years, is where we are able, because of the structure of the house, we are able to, because we must go there in one day, finish, clean up the place, dispose of the asbestos, then the households can come back. But we have these houses where, but because of the extensions and a whole lot of other things that they would have done in the yards, we are not able to do it in one day. Now the budget that we had only allows us for 1 day. And in instances like this, it means we must get accommodation for the households because they can't come into the property until we've finished to remove the asbestos. We've also cleaned and there's no more asbestos material on site. But it also has additional financial implication, even the furniture, because we must move out the furniture, get the storage. So this is one of the challenges that we have had, but not only us, even in some provinces. Hence, at a national level, there's a process now to try and work on how this additional funding in instances where we are not able to do the day in the work in 1 day and finish off. So it really affected us a great deal in this part of Spatial. But we also had about 40 some roofs, my apologies, 45 in extension, 40, which we then also moved from the areas where we couldn't make. So we are still going to have to go back and finalize those houses once we have dealt with the additional funding implications on this type of housing typologies. We had also planned to conduct an audit of asbestos roofs in the province. When we started the work, we were doing it through HDA and NHBRC. We had estimated 10,500 asbestos roofs, but when we concluded at the end of the third quarter, we came up with a number of 11,823 roofs. So we still have a very huge backlog, and the budget is not even closer to what we can, which means we are going to have this program for a number of years until we can finish off the asbestos removal program. Military veterans, also we did not do very well there. Our target was 132. At the end of the third quarter, we had only concluded 55 houses. Two main contributing factors: the unavailability of service sites in the urban areas. In the rural areas, we don't have a lot of challenges in terms of the sites. The challenges that we have in some instances is where beneficiaries are untraceable. But in the urban areas, especially in Mohalakwena, in Polokwane, which they just concluded now, they are finalizing on giving us the sites, and the contractors will be starting. So it actually delayed us. In some instances, we have had to start by installing the services so that we can build the houses for the military and veterans. Marapong CRU, at the end of the third quarter, we had finalized 15,510 of the 514 roofs. We are still committed to ensuring that we finalize this project, a long outstanding project, by the end of June, which is the end of this first quarter. There was also an issue around how we accommodate families that have been displaced when we started with the upgrading of the hostel, which would not qualify to go back into the CRU. And to respond to that, which was a matter that was also raised by the previous portfolio committee, where we've appointed contractors to do 200 housing units at Aljo State, which is one of the matters we have got previously, and we handed over the sites in February. Chigota and Talana, at different levels. Chigota, we are busy with the installation of engineering services. Once we finalize then the construction of the units, we start. Talana, we finalize all the planning. We are on a procurement stage for the appointment of the contractor. The first home finance, which was previously known as FLIS, at the end of the third quarter, though we had 65 subsidy applications approved, we were not able to disperse at that point because we were still waiting for the approval of the amended business plan so that we can have enough money to pay for those subsidies. The money only was the approval of the amended business plan only happened in the third quarter. Hence, at the end of the financial year, we were able to even surpass the target. But at the end of third quarter, we were sitting with approved applications, but we just could not disperse the money. But we were able to close that gap. We had a challenge of a delay in terms of our infrastructure services, where we wanted to do sites installation of services, particularly in Sikune and Waterberg. On the audit outcomes, we there just talked to the two clean audits, which was a great improvement when we received the municipal audit results in November with Capricorn and Waterberg, getting clean audits. We had 4 regressions, more concerning Tulamela, Collins and Elias Muzwale, because they have been on unqualified for quite some time, and they regressed. Tabazimbi, because of the challenges that it had that we are aware of. Unfortunately, got a disclaimer. Members would recall that we did not have a disclaimer in the past years, but unfortunately, Tabazimbi, there was a disclaimer because of the challenges that we had there. In partnership with National Treasury and Provincial Treasury, we are assisting these 6 municipalities outlined there to do financial recovery plans. This is really part of the work that we are doing to make sure that they are financially sustainable. We know that there is highly indebted with the highest ESCOM expenditure, which is why it is being targeted. Musina did manage with their ESCOM, but they are also showing a financial distress. So those municipalities are being supported by the 3 partners. Tabazimbi, we managed to stabilize it with those by-elections. The council is up and running. They've even appointed their municipal manager. Unfortunately, they had to re-advertise for the senior managers, because one of our targets in the third quarter was that by the time the intervention team leaves, they should have appointed senior managers. Unfortunately, they had to re-advertise almost all the positions except for the MM due to a number of challenges in that space, but they are busy with the recruitment. Then on MIG allocation, at the end of the third quarter, the overall expenditure was low. It was at 59.9%, which is below the straight line projection of 66.7%. So we're not doing very well, especially when we look at it in comparison to last year. And we are concerned about 9 municipalities that had spent below 60%. And then the next slide, I will not talk to those municipalities, but the next slide that then shows a list of those municipalities, especially those in red, are the municipalities that were below 60% and not doing very well, and as a result pulled the performance downward. But more concerning is the water service authorities that are not doing very well, and they carry the largest budget. Whether it's Mubani, it's only Capricorn that is doing well, that even got additional money now through the stoppage and reallocation. But Vembe, Supukune, and Mubani not doing very well on their make. On traditional affairs, as at the end of that third quarter, we have delivered those vehicles. We had 6 that were awaiting delivery. We received the last one, which we have 7. We're just busy with the final paperwork and clearing from the suppliers. We should also be able to close on this one. On the initiation programs, we started with the planning as well in the third quarter. We received 559 applications, and we are busy with the evaluations, and so that we can finalize. In the third quarter also, we are able to hand over offices that were completed, and we still have other offices that have been completed that will then be handed over this year. But also there we were able to close on some of those offices. The next slide is just on disaster, and where we are indicating that between October into February, we had the unfortunate thing of disasters. In October, November, it was more thunderstorms. Then up to February, a lot of floods. As a result, we have been part of those provinces that were classified in November, then in January, and also in February, which just shows the magnitude of the challenges that we have had in relation to disasters. October, it was the thunderstorms, mainly around the Mopani area, and some parts of Sukune, and then we had the floods, the February floods with more impact, especially in the Waterberg area. Then the next slides show a cumulative impact distribution. The next slide, thanks. The cumulative impact distribution of the disasters. I just need to indicate that with the houses, the statistics have changed a lot. When we come to report to the portfolio committee, we'll then be indicating a different picture as it relates to the houses. Because when we submitted this report up to the third quarter, for example, in areas like Sukukune, the assessments were already done, we didn't have the figures, but now the picture has changed. We have a lot of houses across the various districts that were affected. But in relation to all the other public infrastructure, like the schools, clinics, roads, bridges, the figures are still the same. You can see that a lot of roads have been washed off. We also had serious damage to schools, around 108, which then also means a lot of resources that are needed to repair the infrastructure. After during the disasters, a lot of relief was provided, short-term relief that was provided by both government and non-government partners. We indicated there the partners that have contributed, but also from the human settlements as well. They started with a provision of building material in Mahalakwena, Mamatakala village. At that point, there was also one temporary residential unit, but also here the figure has changed. When we come to report on the fourth quarter, will also be giving more updated information on the temporary residential units that have been constructed across the province. The other initiative was by Public Works, Roads and Infrastructure in partnership with SANRAL, where communities were affected where they had to construct some bypass access streets just to make sure that the communities can still access the various services. We provide just a high-level summary without necessarily going into detail in terms of the specific projects. Is that the municipalities have been getting grants even before the October floods, the October thunderstorms, for some disasters that happened in the previous years, because we know now on an annual basis we have floods. Now, because of the delay in just the disbursement of funds and approval nationally, we are keeping track of all the resources that we are getting, especially municipalities, to deal with disaster, to reconstruct or rehabilitate public infrastructure. To date, there's a total amount of 352 million that has been given to the various municipalities to implement their number of projects that have been completed. And just to report to the committee that the projects are being monitoring closely. There has not been even a single instance where we found that the municipalities have used the money for other purposes. They have been doing very well. The only challenges was with some projects in Lepede, Ngumbi and the Parallel, but that was just a delay, and those are being supported. But generally, we are happy with the municipalities and their response. They received, 4 municipalities received the latest allocation around 18 March 2025. And then in relation to the province as well, there were requests that were made to the National Disaster Management Center to get some resources for rehabilitation of infrastructure. The national only gave the province 36 million, the table at the bottom there. Public Works 17, Education 15, Health 3.7 million. This is what the province received from the national fiscus. And in the next slide, we also then talk about that in order to respond, the Executive Council also looking at the damage and the impact, approved that 500 million be made available to address the impact, particularly as I would have indicated in the table, the previous table. The damage to homes and bridges is the one that is highly severe, followed by education. Based on that assessment that the Provincial Disaster Management Center did, there was then an approval. Public Works received 512 million from the Provincial Contingency Fund. Education received 86 million, Health 1 million, Sports, Arts and Culture 332,000 is mainly for the repair of libraries, the libraries that were affected by the disaster. So the provincial total will be this 500 million which came from the province plus the 17 million that came from national, and both the departments are busy with the others are at different level. Public Works has already finalized even the appointment of their service providers. They've started, Sports is finalizing, the other 2 departments are still busy with their procurement processes. The next slide just shows the impact of the disasters. Obviously some figures worrying, but the overall requests that have been made to national just to deal with the disaster as per the applications by different municipalities and departments is 5.2 billion, and we are still waiting for the response from the NDMC, but we just look at the figures and with the financial situation, we obviously know that we will not be able to get that money. Chair, then the next slide, I'm going to be jumping a lot of slides because that summary was really providing a picture of the department in terms of where we are. We can just go to slide 19 where there's a pie chart that shows that is Q2, because I want to look at Q2 and show how we ended at Q3. That Q2 we had declines a bit in terms of our overall performance, because in Q1 in terms of our overall departmental performance we were at 72%, but in Q2 there was a decline to 69% as per that pie chart. And we will then in the next slide share will then show the performance per program, with program 1 being administration, that's where we have corporate services and finance. Program 2 is integrated sustainable human settlements. Program 3 is cooperative governance, and program 4 is the institutional traditional leadership. The performance in terms of programs 3 and 4 have been constant, except for one target in cooperative governance, which is because National has reduced the budget for community works program. Those 2 programs have managed to attain their targets. The areas of not so good performance is in relation to programs 1 and 2. The next slide here, then just talk to details which we can then talk to when we take questions. But in the main, the consistent factors even in quarter 2 and quarter 3 in corporate services is the issues around our equity target, is the issues around the number of people that you could employ in line with what we've put in the target. There's the issues related to ICT, disaster recovery tests, which were dependent on a provincial program that OTP was running, but that has since been dealt with. And on finance, in the main, the unqualified audit opinion, but also our ability to pay 100% of invoices, undisputed invoices, within 30 days. We in quarter 2, we were sitting at 99.6. We did not attain 100%, so that then becomes a non-achievement. Program 2, human settlements. Mainly it was the sites. We were lower in terms of the sites that we have planned to connect to water and sanitation versus what we could finalize because of what I indicated earlier on, and this then also goes into program 3 in terms of those stoppages that we experienced, but we also had some South African heritage also stopping us in some projects in Villa. Marapong, where we say the number of community residential units is a carryover as well as Marapong. Once we complete the project, then it will be, then we have dealt with that. There also the issue on the job opportunities, and lastly, the title deeds. Overall, even in terms of our summary, we have not even at the end of the financial year have not been able to attain our targets. The next slide, I've spoken to this one, I'll jump it, is program 3, is the one on community works program. Traditional affairs, all the targets were made. We can then move to slide 29. Then that would be, that would be the quarter 3, the final one on the quarter 3. We did manage to recover after looking at our performance quarter 2. All the DDGs worked on the recovery plans, and we were able to pick up. It's not where we want to be, because at least at a minimum we should be at 80% in terms of our performance, but we were able to improve. And we are putting measures in place just to ensure that, especially in this financial year, we can balance in terms of both the non-financial and financial performance. And the next slide, as you can see there, the 2 programs still, program 1 and program 2, but there's a lot of improvement on program 2, which is human settlements, when we get it in comparison to the previous quarter. For administration, is only when we've appointed, once we reach the equity targets and so on, that will then be able to have attained all our targets. The next slide then just talks to what were the areas of underperformance. We can also take that during the discussion, because the indicators are basically the same. Like I said, it was around the equities and a number of staff employed and the issues related to ICT. Human settlements, on slide 32 there, we still also the CRU contributed, but on the side it even deteriorated a lot in terms of our service side. It's the servicing of sites. We fund them from the informal settlement upgrading program because of the value chain in terms of approval from municipalities and the lot of role players. It's normally most of them we've been struggling a bit with them, and hence our targets were not able to be at the end of the financial year. We're still lower on the number of sites that we have managed to provide. The next slide is that indicator spoken to community works program, which will obviously, because of the budget cuts after the APP was approved, it means for all the quotas we have not been able to reach 100%. Traditional affairs, like I indicated, there are no challenges in that regard. Then on slide 36, we then show our performance on conditional grants as at the end of the third quarter on human settlements. I think I spoke to it when we were dealing with the executive summary already on the human settlement development grant. We have already expended it 98%. The informal settlement upgrading partnership 88%. A huge improvement on the expanded public works program, because we had started late with the appointment. When we came to the portfolio committee to report, we were very low on the EPWP, and we made sure to get more participants to make sure that we do not lose this money, but we can use it to create all the opportunities. And indeed, we did that as we promised the portfolio committee. And by the end of the third quarter, we are already at 81%. Then the last part talks to the just updating the portfolio committee on SCOPA resolutions. As you can see there, our rate of resolving a bit slow at 48% unresolved, and it's mainly because we have in the next slide we have clustered them. Most of our outstanding resolutions are matters that are recurring. So if, for example, towards the land matter, which is with the law enforcement officer, as long as we have not received a resolution on that matter, it means then it remains, it becomes a recurring outstanding resolution. We also have the one on stagnant audit outcomes. As long as we don't improve our audit outcome and go to a clean audit, then it means it remains unresolved. We also had a target on title deeds that AG has been, and it is a national target that AG has been qualifying us on, because it was not smart enough in terms of how it was explained. It has become a challenge, but in the national has revised it now because it was affecting all the provinces. It has been revised, and we then able to clear this one. As measures, chair and members, we have established a SCOPA technical committee to focus on SCOPA resolutions. We use the same approach for the AGSA, and for the first time in the previous financial year, we were able to resolve 100% of our AGSA findings, and we are taking the same approach to deal with SCOPA resolutions as well, and we know that we will be able to improve with this targeted approach. We have appointed members from different units to focus on just on a monthly basis, making sure that there are reports and everything, and those that are within our control, we can be able to deal with that. We have also developed an unwanted expenditure strategy, and we have strengthened our investigation team because of the, if you look at the years, one of the recurring matters is the paragraphs on unwanted expenditure, so that we look at measures to prevent that. We have established a functional interim financial statement review committee, and we have also extended now its mandate to look at performance management, so that we do not have findings on performance information. Then will then be on and to be a candidate for a clean audit as well. One other last matter, that's also a recurring matter, is our contingent liability because of the litigation that emanates from traditional affairs. The traditional affairs and human resources are working very closely to engage traditional leaders, so that where possible we are able to reduce the litigation instead of matters going to court, settle some of them out, or just try and resolve the disputes. But it's also always a very difficult thing. The last part, Chair, we updated to the portfolio committee on slide 34 on the action plan that we had developed following the portfolio committee had visited Waterberg and raised a number of concerns on some of the conditions in the settlements, Bila, informal settlement. Because of that area, the portfolio committee had directed both CoGHSTA and the municipality to formalize that settlement, and the municipality has installed interim services there, and they are removing waste as well, and they have started a township establishment process. We know that a township establishment process takes more than 18 months. If you get a good service providers team, the minimum is 18 months, so it will take time, but there's work that is happening there, and then once they formalize, they can then be able to install permanent services. In Fengerkral, in Bila, the challenge that the committee had identified was the encroachments, which was delaying the finalization of the upgrade of the informal settlement. We have been able to resolve all those encroachments. We have finalized the houses, all of them are completed. Just that there were 7 houses that could not be occupied because the beneficiaries had relocated to their countries of origin, but those houses have been engaged in the municipality to identify qualified beneficiaries that can then take ownership of those houses. Tarazimi's Spirilet settlement, also the portfolio committee had directed CoGHSTA to go and look at the servicing of that settlement to improve the quality of life of the residents there, and indeed we then started a project to do servicing there in Skirlek. By now it could have been completed, but the rains also then delayed, but there's a project that is happening there, and we should be able to conclude it. On the Palale, I'll just state all the matters that were raised have been dealt with. It was around the condition of the ablution blocks that we had to replace and repair. We did appoint a service provider, and they are busy on site there. On the services by municipality, the concern at that point was the long distances that school children had to walk, and the municipality working together closely with education have been able to arrange the transport of for the affected residents. I've already spoken to the provision of the houses for those beneficiaries that cannot go back to the CRU. That is where we have appointed contractors to construct 200 housing units. So we then have dealt with all the issues. In conclusion, Chair, is that we are tabling this report to the audit committee, to the portfolio committee, but also to assure the portfolio committee that the audit committee has also looked at our report, given us comments and recommendations so that we can improve on our performance and project implementation, and we've worked on implementation plans, and we are monitoring the implementation of the recommendations of the audit committee so that we can improve on our performance. We did work on an acceleration plan for Marapo so that we can close it at the end of the first quarter. For 25-26 already we concluded, before the end of the financial year already, we had concluded the appointment of our service providers for both grants, so that in April already we are not talking about procurement, but we are talking about delivery. The last thing is the need for us to then finalize the senior management positions that have been advertised so that we can strengthen capacity at leadership level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, HOD. Here you are, honorable members. Any questions and or comments?
No, thanks very much. The first area that one need to ask is on the progress of the portfolio committee, the city action plan. But just to appreciate the plan, because it then links the work of the portfolio committee and the work of administration. Question would be on some other challenges. You have had some interventions, but on some you did not flag on the interventions. Secondly would be on what would have been the contributory factors that led to the decline in 2 quarters in relation to performance comments what could have been the issue there, but also to check as to whether if you say out of the 25, you were able to employ 4, why are you trading at this snail pace? Is it as a result of the fact that perhaps this post or opportunities may not have been funded, or what could have been the cost of out of the 25, you are only able to appoint 4? And remember that is also in keeping with one of the pillars or programs of the 7th administration in relation to ensuring that you are able to fast track the process of employment. So I just wanted to check on those issues. But you also said on the residential units delivered, I think you could also speak to that. What could have been the problems or the challenges on quarter 3? Because there's an indication that you could not do well with regard to the residential units that you were supposed to deliver. I had thought that these are some of the issues that are being raised, but finally on the SCOPA resolutions, just to get a sense, if you say, for instance, these were the resolutions were able to successfully resolved on a percentage level of 52%. At which level are you able to say the department were able to resolve on this, and you are satisfied that we're resolved? Let's give an example. You may have a situation where you were required to build a house. I'm just giving an example. But then you build that house. By the time you hand over that house, you have not provided some facilities that are attached to ensuring that there's dignity and all of that. At which point are we able to say we're able to satisfy this resolution? And we could boastfully say we've arrived at 52%. And no, thanks, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Over to you, Honorable.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. My frustration always is when we're doing second and third quarter reports a year later. Are you with me? Months behind. I mean, the quarter 4 report should have been in, I think, finalized by Monday. And we're not even there yet. We're dealing with quarter 2 and quarter 3, and I understand that there's been a change of government and MECs. When we have a very awkward period when an election is in May, you've got new MECs, new staff, new handovers. So I understand why it happened. It's very frustrating trying to talk about things that happened in quarter 2 and then they've been changed in quarter 3 and we don't have quarter 4 yet to see the progress. That's not your fault. Please, I'm not blaming you. I understand the circumstance. Just very frustrating for the portfolio. There's a couple of things I want to deal with, and one of those is the asbestos issue. Okay. Now there's a project that's running way behind. And my concern is asbestosis is a life-threatening disease. Asbestosis kills people. And as long as we are sitting in this situation, we are running risks for ourselves as a department, with people getting sick, getting asbestosis. I do know that there are units within the Department of Health that deal with asbestosis and assist. But if we're not getting those roofs corrected fast enough, we're putting the residents of everybody under that roof at severe health risk. Asbestosis goes to lung cancer kills. So I think we really need to have a serious look about that program, because we don't want to be the ones responsible for making our residents ill. I want to go to Alta State and CRU. Yes, we are pleased to see that there is some progress at Alta State, and I was very pleased to see that the toilets were going in there. However, we got photographs of those toilets and I asked for how much those toilets cost. And these are the toilets in the containers. And while I'm sure the community is very relieved, I nearly had a heart attack when I found out that each one of those containers is costing 1 million or 1.2 million rand. I'm telling you right now, I can find somebody tomorrow who will do it at half that price. We know what it's like to establish toilets in containers. We've done it before, and those costs horrified me. I don't know if you can confirm that. Because if that is the case, I think we need to seriously relook our tender processes. I have very big concerns about the regresses of our municipalities, and I know we're doing a lot to address that, but if you go to any one of those municipalities, we've not seen a huge improvement in service delivery and financials in those municipalities. We obviously monitor that quite closely. I think my biggest concern is what is happening at Vende district municipalities. There are big problems in that municipality. And you went on to talk about water service authorities. That is a shambles. It is a shambles in Vende. And we try to liaise. I have spoken to the MEC. We've tried to liaise with those people at Vende municipality since December. The arrogance is mind-blowing in that municipality. But let me tell you what one of the biggest problems is at Vende municipality. Is they're not invoicing people for water. The few people that they are invoicing for water are not getting water at all and haven't for years. Those people who use a vast amount of water are not being invoiced. I can't find anybody, and I've done door-to-doors, the people who are paying accounts from Vende district municipality because they're not getting them. Now, if you're not getting the accounts, if you're not getting the revenue, you are farming backwards very, very fast. Okay? And I think that actually is something that must be investigated very quickly because that could be contributing to the problem. But the water service authorities right now have become a major nightmare, not just in Vende, in the entire province. Where there is no water, there is no development. Where there is no development, there is no jobs. End of story. Simple sentence. Okay. And it becomes concerning, and we've done SPLUMA, we've discussed SPLUMA today. We are discussing developments that we are doing through CoGHSTA in terms of housing. That will all come to naught if your basic services are not there or can be delivered. And we're going into an election period, okay? And we know, we know, it doesn't matter what party you belong to. This is where the protests now start ahead of an election period. And right now we're going to have many. And those protests are destructive. They're destructive. They hold up everything. But in many of these instances, those communities are justified when they've had no water and no basic delivery that they should have in protesting. Unfortunately, they just don't protest very well. So that is a concern. I want to talk about the additional monies allocated in the adjusted budget. Traditional council officers, I think, was 12 million, motor vehicles 35 million, I think that was that also traditional leaders, I think maybe. 15 million for legal fees. Advisors and support staff for 1 million, security services, I think that might have been to do with the Queen, and a human settlement grant of 50 million. Can you give us an update on those? Okay. And where they're at, we've got the adjusted budget, is this being addressed? Back to CRU, well, we've had meetings there, you guys were at the oversight when we were there, we had people there. That was supposed to end at the end of March. Now I understand that obviously the rains and things could have been held up. My whole problem is when we are not completing projects on time, like CRU, the allocated budgets at the start of the project, by the end of the project, because of all the delays and the increases in costs, now it could be an increase in VAT for all we know, your budgets start to escalate beyond what they were planned. So the moment we start running behind on these projects, we need bigger and bigger and bigger budgets to finalize them and complete them. And right now, our budgets are dwindling. They're not growing to assist us. So that is something that must be considered very seriously. Municipalities are the service providers for annual financial statements. It's an ongoing problem. I mean, we have to be doing something internally to have properly qualified staff in a municipality to do annual financial statements. Those service providers are costing us millions that could be going to service delivery. It shouldn't be happening. And then just finally, and I know it's a buggy and I know one likes to talk about it or hear the word, but what sanctions are being imposed? Has there been any further progress on those people who were involved in the VBS saga? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wilson. Over to you, Honorable.
No, thanks, Chair. Let me appreciate the report that's presented. Department, as it also attempts to outline the progress that has been made with regard to a variety of issues of interest to this portfolio committee. I would just want to check with the department with regard to the performance of the municipalities in respect of NIC. It's clear that there is a challenge there, much more maybe with the water authorities. I picked this municipality, the Palane. Of course, I'm aware of what challenges might have been with regard to Tabazindi. They are clear to everyone of us here. The Palane performed very dismally there in terms of 17%. So I wanted to check what could be the challenge that might have led to that dismal performance by this municipality. As well as the issue of the water authorities, of course, failing to perform in that respect, whilst we have a very serious challenge of water in the province. It tells you that we are still very far from ensuring that our people get water. If we might have the municipalities not doing well in that respect. Maybe we might also want to understand from the department what form of support are they offering to the municipalities so that we can consistently be getting this kind of reports of municipalities not failing to utilize the funds that have been used. Because it's meant to address serious issues of service delivery to our people. And this water issue is very critical. I should think it calls upon the department to take an active interest in these municipalities. Another issue is with regard to the issue of disaster management. There was a report there, of course, I should think that was showing the data there, of course, in respect of houses. And the HOD made an indication to say that there was an assessment that has been done, of course, which will change the whole picture. I want to understand what process unfold do the municipalities provide the department with reports in terms of what happened, and thereafter the department would go out to do its own assessment of what obtains on the ground, so that if you go to the municipality with zero report, and there are issues that might have happened in the district, that's what creates a bit of a problem for me. Do they send reports, or is your reporting dependent on your own selves going down on the ground, making that assessment to check what really happened? The other issues with regard to the inability of the department to pay invoices within 30 days. Maybe the department must just explain to us what are the challenges, what made them fail to pay these invoices, lawful invoices as such, within the 30 days as expected. And if they fail, what measures are being put in place to ensure that we don't have a recurrence of the self-same problem? There is this issue of the equity targets that could not be met, and it's in terms of employment. I just can't understand what then becomes a problem for the department to ensure that they address this issue of equity. Unless if maybe it's at senior management level, that the department will be able to explain. Then maybe there might be challenges, of course, that might be there. But I just can't understand how does it come about that we fail to attain the targets that we might have set up as the department in terms of equity. There are, out of the 27 municipalities that we have, only 2 got lean audits. I'm aware that the department is also struggling to get its own clean audit, but I would want to understand what measures are being put in place to make sure that at the ultimate end, I should think we need to be able to normalize having all municipalities getting better audit outcomes. And of course, the department has got a very important role to play in ensuring that happens. So I would want to check what then is the department doing. What form of assistance and support is the department offering to the municipalities, so that at the ultimate end, we might have a province that is shining, and it's ultimately on a responsibility that the department cannot share. Yeah, I should think that's my last question. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Bukane. Over to you, Anissa.
Thanks, Chair. My apologies for this up and down out. I think I should declare, Chair, that my...
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I'm sorry I might have missed the other one. You say making use of spectacles is a problem. Yeah, so let me see. My last one was on the issue of the asbestosis roofs. There have been quite a number of houses that were able to be attended to Then in the presentation as made by the HOD, there is this indication to say there are some houses around 178, if I'm not mistaken, that could not be attended to. I wonder what kind of houses are they that could not be attended to like the others? Because there was an indication to say that with the others you will be able to remove the roof in a day and have them replaced. So I just want to understand what then becomes a challenge with the other houses that are still remaining. Of course, much more of the indication has been made to say that with asbestos, of course, you will have a problem with asbestos because it affects the health of our people. If we had that capacity to have these issues being addressed as speedily as possible, we need to ensure that that gets done. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bukan. Over to you, PC.
Yeah, thanks. I was still apologizing, Chair, of up and down. I think by the time I honorable member started to pass, I was still outside. My other responsibility of the church that we belong to, there are a lot of challenges I'm trying to attend to. Maybe for the first time, let me allow my team to respond. I picked those, some of them like the equity targets, I will come back and talk to. It also applies to senior management, which is delegated in terms of the HR delegations and with the MEC. I will talk to that once they have dealt with the issues. So let me allow HOD and the team to engage.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to request colleagues to deal with the issues and then I'll come back with the ones that are not dealt with. CFO on the issues related to finance and also the scope balance. DG Patla on the HR related matters. Mr. Mukhala on the local government matters. Finish with the justice on the ICHS matters.
In that order.
Thank you again, Chairperson and HOD for the opportunity. I will deal with those that relate to finance as directed by the HOD. On SCOPA resolutions, at what level are we satisfied that we indeed have resolved the matters? I will on this one indicate that the main validation that is done is conducted by Provincial Treasury. They assess the MOVs, the means of verification that we submit for each SCOPA resolution, because they are the ones that have been delegated to make sure that they update SCOPA as well on the progress that we make. So we will have a meeting with Provincial Treasury on each resolution that we think we have successfully resolved. We will produce the MOVs, they will do an assessment, and then we will then be clear that indeed that matter has been resolved, and they will in turn update SCOPA because they work together with the coordinators from SCOPA that we are at that particular percentage. So it is not something that the department decides solely on our own that we have indeed resolved that matter, but it will be through the validation by Provincial Treasury. So as the honourable members will be aware, the SCOPA resolutions will have different means of verification based on their level of complexity or what is required to resolve them. And for instance, the HOD talked about the ones that we have not resolved, like the stagnant audit outcomes that until we graduate to clean audit will remain the same. So Treasury will be also looking at that and progressing towards clean audit. If we get the clean audit, they will then validate that we can graduate. Same thing goes with the one that we always get annually, which might not go away anytime soon. The significant uncertainties because we are always a subject of legal claims, mainly relating to traditional leaders and so on. When you resolve one, another one might crop up and so on. But just to cut it short, provincial treasury is the ultimate arbiter on whether we have resolved a matter or not. And then with regards to the adjustment information, Honorable Wilson, during the adjustment budget we received several injections on our budget. We received 50 million rand for Kawazimbi. And so far on that we have successfully spent 38 million rand, with the 12 million rand being committed to the specialized trucks that we purchased, which the manufacturer said, because they are specialized in nature, they are still in the process of building them for the municipality. And as a result, we will request a rollover from Treasury for the 12 million that we didn't spend. On the vehicles, we had requested a rollover for the vehicles that we had ordered, and we received that rollover of 35 million. From that, as a department, at the end of the year, because we said we should give you progress, we had spent 30 million. We were left with 4.9 million. The 4.9 million was because of delivery issues with one of the suppliers, namely Ford, on certain vehicles of traditional leaders. We only received those vehicles after year end. So we are in discussion with Treasury on how we will deal with the matter, because it was already a rollover when it was given to us. So there's a way that Treasury can assist us, because these were earmarked funds for the vehicles of traditional leaders. So that is what we can indicate. We also received a rollover of 59 million rand, which we underspent on the ISO grant in the previous financial year. That one we spent it because on the ISO grant in total we had spent 99.8%. So that money is completely spent. Those are the main amounts that we received during the adjustment budget, or the bigger amounts. With regards to the smaller amounts, such as kingship and queenship, we were able to deal with those amounts. And then where we had a serious challenge of not spending the whole amount, though we had reduced during the adjustment budget ourselves, it's in the construction of traditional council offices. We're not doing that ourselves. The Department of Public Works is implementing that for us, and hence we will have an underspending in that regard of around 7 million rands. So those are the ones that I could indicate, the critical ones that were given to us, or we have given back to Treasury during the adjustment budget. On the inability to pay invoices within 30 days, during the financial year, there were just two challenges, and one was within our control, and the other one was outside our control. When the financial year opened, the financial year 24-25, we had accruals of housing accruals relating to the HSDG grant, because as honorable members will remember, we had spent both the allocated and the additional 200 million in the previous financial year. So we had accruals for some housing claims that we could only process in April and there were quite a number of them, so they affected our turnaround time because funds had been exhausted the previous financial year, and it affected then the turnaround time for paying. So those affected a number of invoices. I just don't have a number of it, but there were more than 100 invoices, and it affected also our annual report in this particular matter. However, we had few incidents, I think 2 quarters, including the 3rd quarter. The HOD indicated we were at 99.6%, simply because we had one invoice that our official captured a wrong date in the system. Not because the invoice was paid late, but an official captured the wrong date in the system. So the system showed as if it was paid over a long time. And those are the kind of things we don't tolerate at management level because it affects our report negatively, whereas in reality we have paid the invoice on time. So that is where consequence management is instituted. And hence in the 4th quarter we paid 100% of our invoices on time because such mistakes are now being affected. So those are the 2 issues. And also in this financial year we won't have accruals of invoices that where we might have run out of funds, because even on the HSDG grant we spent 99.9%, so it means we didn't in reality run out of funds after attracting the 250 million that the HOD was talking about. I think those are the 3 that I need to respond to. Thank you.
Thanks, HOD. Chair, I will deal with one issue under corporate services and on the matter related to performance of targets. Dr. Malkwan will deal with it, and I think the last one, ABC said he will deal with it on the equity targets. Chair, we were unable to attain our targets in the 2nd quarter, which we then improved going into the 3rd quarter on appointments. We were able to only appoint 4 officials out of the 25 that were targeted. And the reason was basically the delays that we have had within HR in dealing with the recruitment process for the 55 positions that we had advertised, resulting from the capacity that we have within our HR recruitment unit. And what we are currently doing, where there's a position of director that has been vacant for quite some time in the unit, which is part of the positions that we are currently finalizing for fees, so that we can build capacity within HR that will help us in dealing with the issues of delays and poor performance in the area. Thanks.
Honorable Chair, thank you. I'll deal with 2 things regarding in regards to performance. Number 1 is the question that was posed by the honorable member in terms of challenges that were posed without providing interventions towards these challenges. I would like to bring the honorable member to comfort that in terms of the submitted reports, full versions quarter 2 and quarter 3 that are under discussion at the moment, the challenges that have been posed have against them the interventions that the department continue to implement, and hence the improvement of performance that has been noted from quarter 2 to quarter 3, but still acknowledging that performance had dropped when we look into quarter 2 versus quarter 1. So the intention of the presentation basically was to then at a high level brief the honorable members in terms of how we have fared, not exactly showing each challenge against each intervention. So into the second matter, the concern posed by the honorable member was the drop in performance from quarter 1 versus quarter 2, which is also acknowledged. There was a drop from 72% to 69%. And when we look at quarter one and use an example of program one in particular, that's where we see a bit of a problem there. Quarter two was still performed low, but it improved slightly from its performance in quarter one. But our main problems were in quarter two. Amongst the issues that one would cite that impacted the performance in quarter two was percentage of service delivery cases that resolved that are performed at 100% in quarter one and dropped to 97% in quarter two. And that was because some of the queries that were registered required further investigations and delayed the progress in terms of attaining the target of 100% that was attained in quarter one. And then this is the matter that the HOD has already raised in the presentation, that in quarter one, looking into the number of ICT disaster recovery tests conducted, we managed to have one conducted in quarter one and did not manage to have one conducted in quarter two. And this is primarily because the responsibility sits with the Office of the Premier. However, to this end, Honorable Chairperson, the Office of the Premier has managed to get the systems in order, and all the recovery tests have been conducted. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thanks very much, Honorable Chairperson. In terms of the issues around the WSAs, I think Lamle was mentioned specifically, and also the parallel, it is a water service authority as well. There are indeed challenges in relation to the provision of the services. The province is also planning to have a workshop, particularly with the whole province together with the districts, with a view to also engage in the capacity. So one of the issues there was to say that we'll then, by next week, also present, having assessed the capacity of the water service authorities to provide water, with a view to try and improve on that area. And the issue of not invoicing, we've taken note of that. We constantly are supporting the municipalities, but we will just up the effort in terms of them. There's also planned district development model in that district where the whole of government will engage on service delivery issues with them to improve in that space. On the issue of the service providers for AFS, this one was also emphasized by the MEC in the budget speech, to say that the municipalities should appoint qualified staff and be able to do the AFS internally. So that is a matter that the department is taking very keen interest on, to make sure that there's improvement there. On the issue of I think Lepalale have touched that also in relation to the water being taken as very critical. Part of the engagements with the municipalities is to try and improve on that area. The expenditure percentage for Lepalale is low. The municipality do have a challenge in terms of appointing the senior staff. And that issue is being attended to. We hope that it will assist in terms of that. They've just had a challenge also in relation to the municipal manager there. So the performance hasn't been quite good in that area, and we are trying to assist the municipality. On the disaster, the assessment by municipalities, they are part of the assessment team, because the teams will have the CDWs, the ward committees, the councillors are part of that, and also on top of that we do work with MESA to do those assessments. So it is a joint process in terms of this.
Thanks, MEC. Chair, if I captured very well the question by the Honorable Chair, was that what were the challenges which could be attributed to the underperformance on the delivery of units in Morocco. Yeah, there are two factors which could be attributed to the underperformance. We experienced the labor unrest emanating from unpaid wages between the laborers and the contractor, such that laborers would then down tools and stop everybody from entering the premises for construction to go on. But the department has since unleashed the team to go and intervene, and indeed the matter was resolved between the contractor and the laborers. Subsequently, when the construction has to resume, there was flooding. Those two factors are the ones which contributed, but after that, the construction resumed and went very well. That is why we now are only left with 4 units to be delivered, which confidently we were saying by the end of the first quarter, which is June, we would have closed the project.
Thank you very much. Just additions. Honorable Machete, the one on the portfolio contagion plan, a slide where we don't have challenges and interventions. Basically, we are saying that quorum just talks to the challenges in addition to the action we have to undertake. So we are saying we are happy with the progress, though we have not finally resolved like the houses they're still building, but we are saying the interventions, the actions are happening the way we want them, so we are not anticipating challenges. But if there's a challenge that emerges during the implementation, we'll then update the report. That's why that column is not, that's not, we wrote none, but we basically are saying we think we are on track to then implement the actions that the portfolio committee had directed us to implement. Honorable Wilson, on the asbestos removal, I think the danger, that one, I think it's well understood, and that is why it is a priority. But the anecdotal fact is that the resources are not enough. We have reported that the audit said we have over 11,000 asbestos to remove. We did calculations based on the current amount we spend per unit. As a province, we need 412,345,000 to deal with that backlog. That is almost, when we look at how the budget from the Human Settlement Development Grant has gone down. So already we can see that we will not be able to deal with that unless we have money. Considering that you have this one grant, the Human Settlement Development Grant, and there are a number of other sub-programs within that grant, low-cost housing, asbestos, utilities, and. So it is really around balancing what you can only do to the extent that the resources are made available. And this is the point that was also emphasized by the MC when we met with the National Portfolio Committee on this and the other priority programs, that we have these priority programs, but when we look at the need on the ground, especially for provinces like us where we have done a full audit, we now know where all these asbestos houses are and the cost, the estimate cost on the previous year's budget requirements. If we don't have the money, unfortunately, we are only going to do in relation to the amount of money that is available. The second issue, maybe if you can slide number 40 on the question also raised by Honorable Wilson that one toilet container there costs 1 million is not correct. The total cost for the project, and we have provided that breakdown on slide number 40. That we appointed a service provider for 1.9 million, and that amount of money is there to install 2 new temporary ablution containers, refurbish the existing 2 ablution containers, construct a septic tank and French drains. That is what that amount. We are definitely not buying 1 toilet container for 1 million. There's a lot of TV activities within that budget. So we did provide that for the portfolio committee also. That is what we are trying to do with that money. On Vembe, just to add to what my colleague has said, there's a special, we do also acknowledge that there are challenges in Vembe. There's actually a special attention to Vembe. We have just concluded working with MISA. There's a support plan. A lot of assessment has been done in terms of both the infrastructure and the other operational issues. A support plan has just been concluded. We had a meeting with the CEO of MISA. We will then be presenting that report to both the MEC and the executive mayor for sign off, and then MISA and CoGHSTA will then be supporting Vembe to then improve on their water provision. I just wanted to add to what Mr. Mkhala said, but Vembe is indeed on the radar in terms of the challenges that we do have there. The other issue, this is just a bit of an addition to what Mr. Mkhala said on the usage of consultants to PFS. One of the things that has emerged, and there are some good stories that are beginning to emerge, is that a focus has been on getting the right CFOs, and our municipalities indeed, they are appointing CFOs with the right qualifications. But if you don't have a functional office, BTO office, where you have other people that support the CFO, one person is not able to carry that responsibility. We have good stories that are emerging in Mohalakwena and in Pine. The municipalities took a conscious decision to start to build capacity, appointing people in their BTO offices, and we've seen an AG even indicated that what we are observing now is that they have reduced significantly on the reliance. Now even the approach now between the work we are doing with Treasury is also changing to say maybe we're looking at just one area, but there are other interventions that are required, like ensuring that you don't rely on one CFO or one good manager, but have the back office also capacitated with people with the relevant capacity. Like I'm saying that, though we are also concerned about it, but there are good stories that are beginning to emerge. When municipalities have listened to the advices, and we are seeing good stories beginning to emerge on that one. On the VBS, the sanctions, we would request a chairperson to rather submit a report, because there's a report, but we don't have not have the details. We can just submit a report, just show what has happened, what were the sanctions, even in terms of the legal process where we do have information. We can submit that, chair, if we are allowed to do that. So that we are also ordering in terms of just how we report on it, and we can make that information available. I think, yeah, those were the issues that. Oh, the last one was on Honorable Pokani, the asbestos houses, that why others we did, others we could not do. Some families have extended their houses. Others are that, much as you find that looks like the same house, for each house in terms of the requirements on how you handle asbestos, there will be a team that must do an assessment and then say, for this house, this is what you need to do. So you can look at the house and think that they are the same. But when the assessors go into the individual houses, because you must then say, for house number 1, this is the assessment, this is what is required, you find that the different things that could have happened to the structure, or the quality of the structure somehow has over the years not been taken care of, is no longer in very good standing. It means that the work that would be required would be different from the house next to it. So that is basically the reason why others in terms of the standard, and even all the previous ones, this is for the first time that we have this last batch of houses. The ones that we did in the previous, the phase 1, all of them were able to go in there one day, the house, but then we start in the morning, by the end of the day, they are back into their house. But this one, unfortunately, it was just beyond the control of the team, and we just have to make sure that we are fully compliant as and when we deal with that. Thank you very much.
Thanks. There's one issue about the equity targets. HR delegation say it's the MEC which sometimes with some delegatory, but I still remain accountable for senior management. It's a matter that we are not dealing with from level 13, 14, 15. Of course, it's becoming a problem for the department that we have the HOD, which is female DDGs, and so we are trying our level best to put senior managers in the SMS, but we are also getting about getting people with disabilities. Something that we have planned to start to target certain positions for, but I can commit that you will see an improvement. When we tabled the budget speech, we said that we are almost appointing, and I think we are just having some fights in our tables now to want to finalize the appointment, and those appointments will also be given female candidates that will be appointed. The other issue you raised that only 2 of the 27 municipalities got clean audit, and that is the 2 districts. And what is it? You will remember even at the budget speech, we even mentioned municipalities which got at least 5 unqualified audit opinion consecutively. We talk of Molemole, we talk of Marule, we talk of Makulitama, Greater Itawa, Greater Tzamino. These are municipalities who are working with the MEC to target and look at the areas where they are leaking. If I were to give an example, Marule failed to get their clean audit, mainly on the assets, but their supply chain, which is normally a problem, they got it in around that matter. So if you can get even people to help them on the issue of their property, plant and equipment or fixed asset register, then that will be able to get one of them. So it's one of the issues we are trying our level best, including the strategy to reduce consultants, to talk to municipalities, discourage using consultants for simple things like VAT returns. We are busy as a department trying to deal with those issues. There was one issue, of course, both the HOD and is the issue of water. And I think I'm not preempting responding to questions, honorable listeners. We will provide written answers on the questions you have submitted. The biggest thing we are observing when we are coming very close to the matter is mainly on the alignment and the usage of these grants. You find that the DWS has got a grant to do a bulk. The municipalities or water service, they have got the grant to do the reticulations. You find the district is doing reticulation here, the DWS is doing bulk here. Whereas if they have taken this money and go to one project, bulk and reticulation, the communities will go to this. So we have started that, which we call the differentiated approach. We are meeting with all the local municipalities and the district and make sure that they agree on the shortage of water in the settlement within local municipalities. I have already done Waterberg, I have already done Mobile. I'm left with the 3 districts. What we are trying to do is to say us, because we have got the responsibility also to register their projects. We are no longer going to just, when they submit, agree that go and implement this project. We will be able to say, just DWSS just completed the bulk this year. Take this project to go and do reticulation where the bulk is. So that's why we are saying with this, if we are done, we will be having what we will call a provincial strategy for water delivery in the province. And we are so serious about it. And I think the Premier has started to be leading in making sure that once we are done with this process as CoGHSTA, we are going to exhibit it. The Premier will go and pronounce these things and we will not necessarily be around. You might have seen, if you follow, some of you will know about a project called the Butama Sutumuli Water Project, which was started in 2007. But even today it is not, and even the designs may no longer fit into the community which was made for because it took long. So we are trying to resolve those challenges on water and bringing capacity. Municipalities are fighting amongst themselves. The locals say bring the water authority to us. The districts say no, it is fine with us. So we have passed that stage and say we no longer care where the status is. Let's keep the debate of the status reallocation. Let's look at whether people will get water, whether in the district of Waterberg, the status is with local authorities in this time. But once the municipalities at the local level, Honorable Martin, have been assessed in the capacity that they can be able to hold this, we should not necessarily use a generic approach to say, remember, if Tulamela or Mopani, Zanini has got capacity, we may not necessarily help to devolve those powers. But the focus now is to align the plans and have one approach for the entire province to get water. That are the issues I thought I would talk to. The only information I can add is the disaster, which I had heard. The question was clearly to see who does the assessment, in fact. And they try to answer. The assessment is done by everybody else. We involve our ward committees, we involve CWs. But I must say to you that there has been a policy shift in the housing. And even yesterday, I raised it in the Executive Council that we are getting the money from national, or we're not getting the money, they just come and do that. Repairs, do. So we're coming with a note to say, even when we do our assessment, we should be able to submit to a disaster, because human settlement might be in one department with CoGHSTA, but they have got their branch that they can assess and go like Department of Health and say we've got this we require. So I think from now henceforth, the branch human settlement will also go and queue like Public Works, like Health, like Sport, Art and Culture, and say the disaster in the province is like this. Even if national may come, we think from the provincial revenue fund we can get something to go and do as a department to resolve some of these issues. That is where we are on the disaster. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Are there any further questions? Honorable members? In that order, starting with Honorable Minister.
Thank you. Mine's actually not a question, it's just a statement, dear Nisi. Water mafias are real. Water mafias are real. And a lot of these problems that we are having with water comes from internally, and where people are helping them with trucks to deliver the water. I think that's something we need to respond to.
No, thanks, Jess. It's not an issue of a question, it's just a comment to say to the NEC and the department. With regard to Tabazini, I need to indicate that the NEC must put his foot down with regard to appointment of senior managers there, so that they get people who are qualified and capable to ensure that they take that municipality out of the morass it finds itself, so that they are able to move forward. That's my appeal, let me see.
Thank you. I think this brings us to the end of the discussion on the second quarter and third quarter reports. And the committee will sit and discuss and finally adopt the two reports. The next item is computer.
announcements. There is lunch outside.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, MEC once more, for bringing high-level delegation. It shows that we really respect the committee. Even in future, just a bit. This brings us to the end of the meeting. Officially for this